All right. Hello. I'm Marcel Francis for KNR 208, and this is my presentation on hydraulic fracking and how it is already harming the environment. Representing the pro side. So I'll be going into my presentation explaining what hydraulic fracking is, along with a short video to represent how it works and how it operates and what is the process. And then after that, I'll go into why hydraulic fracking is a big deal, also involving the stakeholders in our hydraulic fracking, which I have three of. And then we'll go into a few reasons why hydraulic fracking specifically is bad for the environment and what it's doing to the environment as well. And then I'll have my reference page at the end. So let's get started. Okay, so to start off with what hydraulic fracking is, I have the definition. Hydraulic fracking is a geochemical engineering process by which huge volumes of water, combined with, of course, chemicals and sand proppant, is injected into tight formations with high pressure to fracture and facilitate recovery of unconventional reservoirs of oil and gas. And then it kind of goes into specifics of the hydraulic fracking name. As you can see, I have a visual here on the right, and how it works is there's a well usually at the top of every fracking pad or at a fracking site, and then down the well you have the steel pipe, which is where the water and the chemicals go down into the earth's soil, and then you can see it has a little curve, about 109-degree curve there, and this is when the chemicals do their work within the steel pipe with high pressure fracturing fluid, creating fissures. And fissures is where the oil and natural gases come from the ground are coming from. So with the chemicals of fracking, they're used to break kind of cracks into the soil, which releases the natural gas, which then goes back upstream to the well. And now I will show a quick video here, of course, describing more in depth with visuals of what hydraulic fracking does.
Deep underground lie stores of once inaccessible natural gas. This gas was likely formed over millions of years as layers of decaying organisms were exposed to intense heat and pressure under the Earth's crust. There's a technology called hydraulic fracturing, or fracking, that can extract this natural gas, potentially powering us for decades to come. So how does fracking work, and why is it a source of such heated controversy? A fracking site can be anywhere with natural gas, from a remote desert to several hundred feet from your backyard. It starts out with a long vertical hole, known as a wellbore, drilled down through layers of sediment. When the well reaches 2,500 to 3,000 meters, it's at its kickoff point, where it can begin the process of horizontal drilling. It turns 90 degrees and extends horizontally for about 1.5 kilometers through a compressed black layer called the shale rock formation. A specialized perforating gun is then lowered and fired, creating a series of small inch-long holes that burst through the well's casing into the rock layer. About 3 to 4 months after the initial drilling, the well is ready for fracking to begin. Fracking fluid is pumped down into the well at a pressure so high it cracks the shale rock, creating fractures through which the trapped gas and oil can escape. The fluid itself is more than 90% water. The rest is made up of concentrated chemical additives. These vary depending on the specific characteristics of the fracking site, but usually fall into 3 categories. Acids for clearing debris and dissolving minerals, friction-reducing compounds to create a slippery form of water known as slick water, and disinfectant to prevent bacteria growth.
So there you kind of have the process generally of how hydraulic fracking works. And here on the next slide, kind of explaining why hydraulic fracking is a big deal. The reason it is because hydraulic fracking was really a revolutionary invention into accessing natural gases and resources underneath the ground that previously was not accessible at all. And provided with those resources, it also provided a lot of jobs, of course. Fracking, it requires a lot of people, it requires a lot of equipment, and with that equipment, build created jobs as well. And of course, with natural resources and natural gases, it's very valuable to the U.S. economy. And despite the U.S. economy's benefits with these resources, and of course providing jobs and growing the oil industry, there's also been a lot of pushback recently due to the environmental impacts hydraulic fracking has on the environment. And so it has been an ongoing debate on whether, there should be an alternative energy source safer than fracking, because hydraulic fracking also, it can be a high risk job as well, and also environmental concerns to hydraulic fracking. If you saw it in my last slide here, you see methane escapes during the mining process, and methane is a dangerous gas that can harm, of course, the environment around it. So we're going to go into the next slide here, which is who it impacts, and this is my stakeholder slide. Once the U.S. economy, of course, as I kind of just mentioned, with the U.S. economy, with accessing these natural gases, it provides jobs, it's good for your economy, but also more importantly, which I think is more impactful for vastly all of us who use natural gases, is that because of the amount of natural gas that has been accessible, the cost of gas over the years has gone down. I know this isn't presently the case because gas right now is so expensive. But as you can see, from 2002 to 2013, with a study from Adam Fuse, who did this research, gas dropped about 47%, really since hydraulic fracking took off in the early 2000s. And then next we have their environment. Despite the economic benefits, fracking, it has lasting impacts on environments that include, of course, climate change, because the pressurized ground, when accessing these natural gases, the temperature increases, and therefore isn't healthy for neither the soil or growing, of course, or for vegetation growing with that same ground. And of course, pollution, deforestation, and extinction of species, really because due to natural chemicals that are released during hydraulic fracking. And then there's community members as well. This is, you can say, community members. It's both pros and cons for them, because a lot of people in these fracking communities work for these industrial companies that are in their community and creating these fracking pads and fracking zones in their community, providing those jobs, especially in rural landscapes where there might not be a lot of job opportunities. But then also other community impacts involve factors such as lots of equipment being in your of course, lots of traffic, because hydraulic fracking has lots of equipment that's needed to do that, and also dangerous to the drinking water, because again, those chemicals used to extract these natural gases can sometimes seep through into the water supply of the community around them as well. So first reason here was why fracking is dangerous is because the biosphere, and the biosphere is really the air and energy that surrounds an environment, or you can say a community. And this is because during fracking, the chemical mixture that permeates rock, which leads to pollution in large areas and groundwater, drinking water, is on fracking sites. And when you have a lot of fracking pads within a certain community around each other, this creates a really unhealthy living environment for community members, because of the amount of toxic chemicals that, one, are going through the groundwater that can contaminate you, but also breathing in those toxic chemicals that are released through fracking are extremely dangerous as well. And another reason is deforestation. Fracking pads, they take a lot of room and a lot of space. So in turn, you have to cut down a lot of trees, also environments that could also impact plants and animals, and species who have to move out of their natural environment as well. So that's one of the reasons right there. And then kind of touching on reason number two is habitat destruction. Again, fracking, I can see here, fracking converts rural and natural areas into industrial zones, replacing forests and farmland with well pads, roads, pipelines, and also other infrastructure. And we have a couple examples right here. One of them being here in Wyoming on my second point, which is Wyoming has fragmented key habitats from mule deer to pronghorn, and which are important draws for the state's $340 million hunting and wildlife watching industries. So really, which is in contrast, when you are in a place like Wyoming, whose habitat and nature is very prevalent to their tourism, it's affected by fracking, because despite it also being economically beneficial overall, it's still affecting habitats in rural places like Wyoming negatively, due to, again, how much space and how much land and resources fracking takes up. And then we're going to go to reason number three, which is concern in communities. Fracking, it takes a lot of resources, and it can take 2 to 4 million gallons of water for a single lateral. And a lateral is, in the video, one of the wells, which then is used to mine underground and then extract the natural gases from there. So it takes a lot of resources to mine, and some people in these communities aren't a fan of that, as it can drain the water, the clean water supply in a lot of these communities. We can see in a research study here from Anthony Ladd, who did research conducting research in fracking communities in 2013, said most people are not a fan of fracking in their communities due to really everyday things that are kind of bothersome to these people's living, such as damage to roads, inadequate oversight of fracking industries, which means allowing fracking procedures to affect people's lives, which can involve, dirty water supply, also, like you said earlier, traffic, and also maybe not providing jobs to that community as well. And also a lack of control over industry operations. Again, with fracking, you're not coming in quietly into these communities. A lot of times they're taking it over. And also lots of unsafe risks and conditions for workers, and a multitude of reasons is why people see fracking as being more harmful to their communities than beneficial. Okay, and this is my reference page here with a list of resources I've used for this presentation. Again, this is my presentation of why I think hydraulic fracking affects the environment negatively. And yeah, thank you.